The following episode contains details of an attempted suicide. If you or someone you know has had thoughts of suicide or expressed thoughts of suicide, please do not hesitate to call the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 988, or you can text TX to 741-741. There are counselors standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are also counselors who speak Spanish. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were Lifejacked.
What do you do when mental illness tries to take over your life? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is Lifejacked, the Resilience Podcast. Lifejacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Amy Taylor, who lives with bipolar disorder, ADHD, and anxiety, has had a full and happy life. However, she has had struggles with thoughts of suicide. A social worker by day and an MBA student and podcaster by night, Amy likes to use her experiences to educate the world about the stigmas of neurodiversity and mental illness. She will share how important it is to have consistent med checks with a psychiatrist and manage self-care and mental illness so that it does not manage you. Hi, Amy. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me on your show, Dr. Rowe. I appreciate your giving me the opportunity.
Oh, most definitely. So please share with the listeners just a little bit about you.
I am a single mom. I'm an older mom. I'm 53, and my daughter is 13. I have a grown son, and I am basically just your average Midwestern girl. And I just happen to have bipolar disorder, so I do cycle and have times when I'm up and times when I'm not up.
Now, when did you first receive your diagnosis, your bipolar diagnosis? And before you received it, did you know something was not right before then?
I have known that something was wrong since I was little. I've always suffered from some kind of depressive episodes from a very young age, and I just always blamed it on some sexual abuse that happened when I was a child. And then as I got older, the depressions got more severe, and I got diagnosed with recurrent depression in college. And then by the time I was 30, it had definitely reared its ugly head, and I got diagnosed with bipolar then.
Now, had you gone to any therapy to heal from the past experiences that you had or the past trauma that you had?
Oh, yes, definitely. I went to, I don't know if you know what Moxa is. I'm in Kansas City, and it's definitely here. It's basically a place that they help sexual abuse survivors, and so I did go through therapy there.
Do you feel like the therapy worked for you? Because sometimes, people go through sexual abuse and trauma, and they put the blame on themselves, right? And they feel shame, and so then they don't want to get help. So do you feel like it helped you?
I feel like it did help. I don't think it was the end all be all. I don't think it fixed everything, but I think it made it to a point where I could deal with it. And then I've had other therapy on my own where I focused on issues that were maybe a result of that.
And my understanding is that it can take a few trials sometimes before finding the right meds. So what was your medication process like?
Oh my gosh, I felt like a guinea pig. I definitely have tried just about everything that's out there. And when I was younger, before they knew I had bipolar disorder, they put me on things like Prozac, which you'll find out later is just not a good mix if you're bipolar. It actually makes you very volatile and angry, or it did me. And so I've tried several things. I've had migraines from things. I've had stomach problems from meds. I've tried lots, and I even had meds that when they took me off of them, I had hallucinations because they took me off too quickly, and that was one of the side effects. So I've definitely been through it all.
So you have found a medication that works now, correct?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So is the medication, is it something that you can kind of take during the week and then maybe on the weekend you can relax, or you can take it for a bit and take a break, or is it a medicine that you have to take consistently?
I have to take it consistently. If I miss a few days, I will know. I will start to be weepy and cry and not know why I'm crying, and then I'll think, oh my gosh, did I take my medication? And my mom will even ask. I only live a few miles from my mom, and I'll call her crying, and she'll say, did you miss your medication? So it's definitely something I have to stay on top of.
Now, often people make jokes about the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. They, kind of make jokes with people if people are, like you said, crying, or they go from one extreme mood to the other, and they say, oh, that person must be bipolar. But for the listeners who do not know, what exactly does it mean to be a person who is living with bipolar disorder?
I think it means that we have to be very careful and take good care of ourselves. We're like everybody else. We just have mood swings and we have sleep issues. If I am not sleeping well, I can get to the point where I'm only sleeping a couple hours a night or less, and then I become manic. And then when I'm depressed, I sleep way too much. I have what's called hypersomnia, and I can sleep all day and get up for a couple hours and go back to bed. I don't care about eating. I don't care about watching TV, reading a book, working, anything. I just want to sleep.
Wow, that talk about trying to maintain your life balance or work-life balance and family. So how is there anything that in particular that helps you balance it all?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I work for an incredible organization that I've been there 11 and a half years now, and there is no way in the world that I could still be there to this day if they had not worked with me. Even when my FMLA runs out, they continue to work with me because you only get so much FMLA a year, and if I'm having a bad year, I can use that up in the beginning of the year and then be in trouble later. And they have been incredible.
Well, that's really awesome that you have a very supportive work environment, because a lot of people do not have a supportive work environment. So for the listeners who may not be in those supportive work environments, so what things could they perhaps go to HR and help, with their work life?
I think they need to talk to their doctor, their psychiatrist preferably, and get help from the psychiatrist to fill out paperwork for HR and FMLA. Excuse me. And I have found personally that it's been very beneficial to talk to my supervisor. I've had the same supervisor for probably 8 years now, and she is very, very supportive of me. And so I felt like it was good to actually, I feel like it's coming out of the closet almost to tell her that I have bipolar disorder, but I did that and it was very helpful. I don't think everybody can do that. I think you have to trust your gut, and if you work somewhere where it's safe to do that or not. But it's been beneficial to me. And if you do get in a spot where they're not working with you, then definitely go to HR and let them know.
Thank you for that information. And I hope for the listeners out there that gives you, some information that you can use to help to protect yourself and make you feel comfortable at your work environment. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about mental health, right? I mean, the United States is not the best at supporting with mental health issues. They almost victimize and stigmatize mental health so much that it's just ridiculous. But what is the biggest misconception about mental health that you would like to clear up for people?
I think there's a big stigma that if you have a mental health diagnosis, that you're broken and that you're not fixable and that you're maybe not the brightest person and you maybe don't have aspirations and dreams and you're lazy. And I'd be the first person to say that is not true. I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot of aspirations. I have friends who have bipolar disorder and they have dreams and aspirations. We are just like everybody else. We just happen to have something like somebody has diabetes. They have to do things to take care of themselves when they have diabetes, and we have to do that with bipolar disorder.
So I have to ask you, I think you mentioned your mom lived very close to you. I'm assuming she's a part of your support system. And so my question is, do you have a support system or a particular person who has been a big support in your life?
My mom is my biggest support. I try not to cry right now thinking about it. She is just, man, I have put her through the ringer sometimes thinking that she wasn't being supportive, but every single time she's had my back. My dad, who they're still married, my dad is very supportive of us as well, but my mom's the one I call. And I also am blessed with some very good friends, one I've had since kindergarten. And like I said, I'm 53, so that's quite a while. And one I've had since junior high, and the three of us are very close, and they definitely have listened to me through some desperate times.
That's awesome. Well, it's wonderful that they can provide support to you and help you get through from day to day. So for those of us who are not necessarily neurodivergent or are not struggling with mental illness, at least not that we know of, because many of us maybe don't know. But how can we best support people who are diagnosed with mental illness?
I think to listen to them and to just be supportive, not to try to fix them, not to try to tell them what to do. It's not helpful to say you have to take your medicine or you have to go see your doctor. You have to suggest it kindly and realize that they are an adult and they can make decisions for themselves, but sometimes they need a little help being pointed in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about your daughter. I believe you kind of in the preliminary of talking about the interview and getting ready for the interview. So your daughter has autism, right?
Yes.
And so as a mother, and I also have a son who I have three boys, and my oldest has high functioning autism, Asperger's. And so I know what that moment was like when I received his diagnosis. So when you just received the diagnosis for your daughter, what was that moment look like?
I was actually so relieved that somebody finally saw what I saw, because I took her to a children's hospital when she was 5, and she was in kindergarten, and said, something's wrong. And I really, as I'm a social worker, I've seen and I work with people who have autism. I said, I really think she has autism. And they said, she's too social, like she'll look you in the eye. She doesn't like to do that, but she will do it. And she is social. So they would not give her that diagnosis. And if I had it to do over again, I would have pushed that more and gotten a second opinion. But I was luckily in a school system with her that totally had her back and worked with her like she had an IEP, even though she didn't. And they were wonderful with her. So she did really well until she went to junior high, and it was a different school and different teachers. And instead of being in one classroom all day, she had 7 classes to get to and from, and her grades dropped. She went from like an A, B student to a D, F student. She started having a lot of anger issues at home. She would come home from school and be totally exhausted. So I said, you know what, I think it's time to get a second opinion finally. And this time they said, I don't know how the first people missed it. She's definitely autistic. And I just felt this relief of finally I'm going to get some support.
And that's wonderful that you were able to get support for your daughter in time and work with her. Because I can tell you, it's a long process. My son is almost 17. It's come a long way. And yes, the changes in school, can be different and hard to navigate because you never know what they're going to experience. You try to prepare them, but then there's that one thing that happens, and then you're like, oh, I didn't have a social story for that. So,
right.
Yeah. So as, mothers because I have listeners who are parents of children with autism and, maybe they just are finding out, or maybe they are seasoned like we are. But what is something that you want to say to encourage moms out there that may have received a diagnosis that now they have a child who is neurodivergent?
That it's not a life sentence. I mean, even though it's something they live with their whole life, it's not a negative thing necessarily. My daughter is quirky and funny and incredibly talented, and she just makes me laugh every day. So just because they have autism doesn't mean they don't have their own personal traits that make them unique in who they are. They're not just autistic. They are their own individual.
Now, you have a podcast. So tell us, what is the name of your podcast and what is the topic that you mostly focus on?
Well, my podcast is called Advancing with Amy, but I have a tagline of mental health warrior and neurospicy mama, and I just kind of had fun with that. And that's what we discuss. We discuss mental health issues, not just bipolar, anything out there. And then we also discuss neurodiverse women mainly, but I've just started opening it up to men. So we're going to get more diverse as we go.
Neurospicy mama. I love it. How did you come up with that?
That's funny because I actually stole that from a guest. I did an interview with a lady who is autistic, and she called herself Neurospicy, and I just decided to add the mama and use it. I loved it.
I love that too. That's essentially how I came up with Lifejacked. I was going through a couple of trials in my life, and especially during my doctoral program, and gone through a layoff, and I was dealing with a boss that was not, and my program I was in closed. The school closed right before I was going to dissertation phase, and I had to find another, school. It was just a bunch of stuff, and that's what my professor, she said, it sounds like you've been Lifejacked. And I was like, I surely have.
Yeah, you're like, ding, ding, ding.
Right. And I was like, wow. And I knew I was going to use that term. I just didn't know when I was going to use it. I didn't know if I was going to write a book or whatever it's going to be, but it has turned into, hey, Lifejacked, because things happen in your life and it definitely jacks with you. It's like, oh my God, I'm not expecting this to happen. And it does throw you for a loop. But, thank you so much for focusing on mental illness and, sharing that, that education and sharing that information out in the world, because many of us need that. Hopefully in the United States, we do have a few people who are advocating for, laws to change regarding mental illness, because, people really do, more people than we realize struggle with mental illness, especially depression. So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned There are times that you have dealt with depression, and even sometimes you have thought of taking your life. So, where are you at this point with that?
I'm at a place where I'm much better. I think I have had suicidal ideation so often in my life over the last 20, 30 years, and I attempted suicide as a teenager, that I truly appreciate the life that I have now and that I'm still here. I didn't think I would be here at this age. I didn't think I'd live past 35, let alone be in my 50s. And so I appreciate the life that I have. And now when I get really depressed, I just went through a depression a couple months ago. I'm just now on the other side of it for a few weeks, so maybe the last month. And no matter how bad it got, I just kept telling myself, I always make it through this. I always have, and I always will.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. So if you could describe your life in one word now, what word would you use?
Peaceful.
Peaceful. Why that word?
Because I've been through so many hard times where there was, yelling from me, anger, crying, so many just like dramatic and traumatic times that I don't know, I've really come to a place where I feel at peace with who I am and what I've lived through, and I'm looking forward to my remaining years. And so I just feel at peace with who I am now.
Now, Amy, in your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
Build resilience. That's a great question. I think it's trial and tribulation. I think you go through things and you come out on the other side, like I was just talking about, and you realize that, hey, you know what? I made it. I can do this. And then the next time's a little bit better, and the next time's a little bit better than that. And you start to believe in yourself and to know that you can survive, and then you suddenly are resilient.
I really appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to be on this show. Can you do me a favor and tell everyone how they can listen to your podcast or either book you for their show?
Oh, sure. I would love to do that. You can find me on my website, which is www.advancingwithamy.com, or you can find me on any of the regular hosts like Spotify and Apple and things like that. But you can email me as well at amy@advancingwithamy.com, and I will be happy to talk about being on your podcast or having you on mine. There's a guest application on my website you could complete.
And you're also on social media as well, right?
Yes, I am on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn fan, but I do like Facebook too, and I tinker sometimes in Instagram.
Wonderful. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Well, I would say to believe in yourself and be kind to yourself. We are so hard on ourselves. And I would also say I'm on a mental health board here in Kansas City, and their focus has been catching things before it gets out of control. And so what that means is that when you're getting depressed and you're starting to have suicidal ideation, or you're starting to feel anxious or whatever, go see someone right away. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't wait until you have to reach out at the last minute and you're not sure if you're going to make it because you've taken, some drastic measures. Go get that help in the very beginning.
Well, Amy, I really appreciate you, and I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Rowe.
You've reached the end of another episode of Lifejacked, the Resilience Podcast. Connect with me at www.lifejackedpodcast.com. Don't forget to sign up to the blog so you won't miss any events or episodes. And every now and then, I'll give away free materials from my guests or from me. Remember to live, love, laugh, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.